Not all countries are easy to travel to. Cuba is definitely one of the harder ones. The hardest part of being in Cuba is to understand what is going on. We can read about it, the political situation, the embargo, hyperinflation, no gasoline, daily blackouts that last for hours. But what does all that really mean? How do people live under these conditions? Today we are about to find out.
We are walking around La Havana since 2 days now, and I've already learned so much about life in Cuba in 2026 and the current situation of Cubans so far. And today I want to do my best to explain you what it's like to live in Cuba right now and what Cubans also think about their current situation and the crisis in their country. Just so you know, a lot of Cubans do not want to talk about the actual situation and especially not about politics in front of the camera. Everything that I'm telling you is what they've told me. So it's not just like I'm making things up or it's just things that I read. It's actually things Cubans told me.
Verdaderamente no le veo futuro.
Hay cosas que están mal hechas aquí, ¿no? No vamos a caer en eso. Pero los que nos quieren afichar son ellos.
Patria o muerte, venceremos.
I've heard salaries from 2,000 pesos per month, which was the lowest, to 15,000 pesos per month being the highest from what I've heard here. With that little salary, I was wondering how the hell can Cubans pay for basic things such as food? And the answer are bodegas, at least partially. Bodegas are very small supermarkets where Cubans can buy basic food. They can go to these supermarkets with a so-called libreta. It's like a small booklet where the government subsidizes food. In this booklet it states, for example, you can get this amount of rice, this amount of noodles, this amount of oil, and that is the amount of these kinds of foods that people can buy for a very low price. The prices are subsidized. We went to a bakery the other day and there they told us that with the libreta that people can buy bread for less than a cent. So quite affordable. However, the problem here is definitely that currently there is hardly anything here. We've just talked to a Cuban who told us that right now Cubans get like 1 pound of rice per month and that's it in these bodegas. There is nothing here.
Pan, en la panadería, pan. Lácteos, leche, yogur. Así se controla por el lugar.
¿Y cada persona tiene derecho a las mismas cosas?
Todo el mundo tiene derecho a lo mismo. ¿No? En diferencia de los bebés o las personas mayores.
Ellos tienen
otra prioridad.
Ah, vale, entiendo.
Los niños tienen una prioridad y las personas normales como yo, como tú, una cosa, todo el mundo tiene el mismo derecho.
¿Y cómo, o sea, cuánto hay? ¿Hay de todo lo que está en la libreta ahora?
En este momento no hay todo. Bueno, todo se basa en el bloqueo. Hay que producir. Las producciones son poquitas debido al bloqueo, debido a que no hay combustible, porque Cuba es un país eminentemente agrícola. Si no hay combustible para la agricultura, no se produce comida. Es lo principal. Lo principal es el bloqueo. La comida es, por ejemplo, te bloquean el combustible, las maquinarias para cosechar la caña, el azúcar, el frijol, el arroz, el café. Necesita combustible, cosecharlo, transportarlo. Y con $1 que cueste, por ejemplo, 500 pesos, puedes comprar aquí 80 libras de arroz.
Demasiado, sí.
Porque esto lo subsidia el gobierno, el Estado, como se dice en Cuba. Aquí $1 puede costar 1 kilo, pero liberado, no por este país, no por el sistema este de comercio de las bodegas.
Claro, o sea, la gente siempre puede comprar más si necesita más, pero por un precio más caro.
Un precio más caro, en otros sistemas de comercio, que son los sistemas de comercio independientes al gobierno.
We were just able to talk to some people working in a bodega, which was very interesting. They were quite open to talk and to explain us things, and they also had way more food in there, although still really just little. There was milk in there, which is also for free because it comes from the humanitarian aids, and it is great to know that these aids are actually reaching Cuba and its people. I've seen a few days ago in the news that there was a huge ship from Mexico packed with basic things, foods, but like also shampoo, toothbrushes and all these basic things, and they just send it to Cuba. It is amazing that these things are reaching Cuban people. However, it is also extremely sad that this country depends on humanitarian aids. Really, there was nothing happening here no war, no natural catastrophe or anything like that. Usually when things like that happen, you can hear about humanitarian aids and so on. This country depends on these things. So the most common thing to buy food for Cubans is probably on markets like this one here, or on little cars that are standing in the street. They are usually selling vegetables and fruits. And then there are also the bodegas, of course, where they can buy affordable food. But then there are also supermarkets, like small supermarkets like this one you can see in the background. And these are private supermarkets where you can basically find everything. If you've heard the news about Cuba, you probably also read about a food crisis, that there is nothing here in Cuba in general. And that is true. If you go to the normal supermarkets, to the bodegas, there's hardly anything. However, in these supermarkets you can find absolutely everything, but they are also extremely expensive. They are private supermarkets and the things are being imported. In this case of this supermarket we just asked, things are being imported from Italy. And the people that buy there usually have families outside of Cuba that support them somehow. Because otherwise Cubans wouldn't be able to afford this with their salary of like $10 to $25, something like that. We are staying in La Habana La Vieja, Old Havana, and here we haven't experienced any electricity outage yet, although you hear in the news that there are electricity outages every day for several hours. However, there is a reason for that. This area here is the touristic area of La Habana. It's where all the hotels are, restaurants, bars, everything tourists do, or at least most things that tourists would do, are here in this area. And therefore they prioritize this area so that tourists have a great experience during their trip to Cuba. But there were Cubans who told us that electricity outages are really nothing rare. They happen on a daily basis, they happen for hours. If we continue our trip and leave La Habana, I think at some point we will probably experience it from what we've heard. And then there's also the crisis of the gasoline here. You read it in the news, there's no gasoline here. And that is true. Gasoline prices, first of all, have increased a lot. It's extremely expensive here. We've heard of prices of more than $8 per liter, which is crazy. However, for example, we are going to take a bus later today and drive all the way to Santiago de Cuba. And there's no problem about doing that. You can definitely do it, but again, tourists are being prioritized here. The gasoline is being distributed for certain things. Tourism is one of the most important industries here in Cuba, an industry that still brings some money into the country, and obviously, therefore, it's being prioritized. So as a tourist, you can still travel. I think even as a Cuban, if you have the money, which is a problem here, definitely. And then you can also see a lot of piles of garbage here in the streets. In general, I would say that La Habana is quite dirty, but there are piles of garbage every now and again, and that is also because of the gasoline crisis. Gasoline is being distributed and they are saving gasoline, and therefore they do not collect the garbage on a daily basis anymore, which is why in some areas you see a lot of it. What also caught a lot of my attention when walking through the streets of La Habana were all these people on the streets. Like, it doesn't matter at what time you go, what day of the week you are walking through the streets, they are always crowded and full of people. And at first, to be honest, with all the respect, I thought that people aren't working. But if you take a closer look, there are a lot of people actually working on the streets, like doing some reconstruction works on the buildings, selling products on the streets. And there are also a lot of people constantly looking for work. For example, as a tourist, you will constantly get approached by people who want to help you, who want to show you places, give you information about life in Cuba and so on. And after doing that, they will ask you for a little tip, which in my opinion is completely fine. But it's interesting to see that. It's like people are making up jobs basically and trying to find ways to make money. They are walking through the streets, constantly looking for opportunities. That's kind of brilliant, actually. What is definitely iconic in Cuba are these vintage cars and also vintage trucks that you can see here basically everywhere. There are so many of them, and it really caught my attention. I was wondering how do they manage to maintain these cars that often are from the 50s? how do they manage to keep them in such a perfect state? And I actually talked to someone yesterday who was repairing one of these cars. And lo están arreglando, así que tienen buena pinta como los que vemos allá en la calle.
Sí.
Increíble. ¿Todavía funcionó? ¿Hay que reparar cosas?
Todavía funciona.
Increíble. ¿Y cuál color van a pintar?
Rojo y blanco.
Rojo y blanco. ¿Es caro reparar esto?
Muy
Seguramente. Sí, me imagino.
Claro. Cuesta mucho, no hay pieza aquí en Cuba.
Claro. ¿Hay que importarlo? ¿Cómo
Hay
es?
que importarlo.
¿De dónde?
De Estados Unidos.
Ajá. ¿Se puede fabricar algunos partes aquí o nada?
Muy pocas cosas.
Ajá.
Lo único es hacerle chapitería, pintura, pero los parabrisas, parte del motor, parte de los faroles y eso hay que importarlo. Las insignias, estas insignias hay que importarlas.
¿Y allá en Estados Unidos todavía lo fabrican?
Sí.
Porque allá no se ve estos carros.
No se ve.
Solo
pero
aquí.
Pero existen las piezas.
Interesante. ¿Cuánto vale reparar un carro así más o menos? Carísimo.
Cuesta uno más o menos unos $10,000.
10,000. Uf, carísimo.
Hacerle chapitería, pintura, tapicería,
Ajá.
forrarle el techo, reparación del motor.
Ajá. ¿Y hay mucha gente aquí que saben cómo
Sí,
repararlo?
cómo no, sí.
¿Sí?
Mucha gente, sí.
Muy bien, vale, gracias.
No, de nada.
We've asked several Cubans about their opinion of the current situation here in Cuba, and they are quite divided. Some say the situation is caused by the US embargo that lasts since more than 60 years now. Others say that things were much better when Fidel Castro was still alive, and they aren't really in favor of the current government.
La situación actual es culpa total y absolutamente del gobierno revolucionario con un partido único que no permite el pluralismo y además centraliza la economía de modo tal que impide el desarrollo, la evolución y el crecimiento de las empresas privadas.
¿Por qué no quieren dar petróleo ahora? Ahora no hay carro, no hay gasolina. ¿Por qué? Porque los cubanos no queremos. Porque el presidente no quiere. ¿Quién es el que no quiere? Entonces hay cosas que están mal hechas aquí, ¿no? No vamos a caer en eso. Pero los que nos quieren afichar son ellos.
Si el gobierno de Estados Unidos quitara el embargo mañana, en un año, ni en ningún momento Cuba se iba a recuperar. Y ahí se iba a dar cuenta el mundo que el problema nunca fue el embargo.
¿Qué piensas que tiene que cambiar en Cuba para mejorar?
Muchas cosas.
Muchas cosas.
Sí.
Bueno.
Bueno, es bloqueo, eso no te quepa duda. Puede ser que hayan cosas que tú no sepas hacer bien en tu casa,
Claro.
pero si tú no puedes comerciar con nadie. Si somos un estado fallido, si el socialismo no sirve, porque no dejan que se acabe de joder, porque yo tengo que cerrarle las fuentes de ingresos.
Cubans are really suffering. They are worried about basic things like how to feed their families. They aren't living anymore, they are surviving. But what surprised me most was that after all the sorrow I've seen, there are still people truly believing passionately and faithfully in the Cuban Revolution.
La opinión que nosotros tenemos de Trump con el bloqueo tan grande este que tiene. Malo. Sus palabras. Trump, malo. Malo. Mira, nos ha quitado que podamos comercializar con un montón de países. Le ha prohibido a los familiares que le manden ayuda a Cuba. Le ha prohibido hasta amenazarnos día por día de que va a apoderarse de Cuba. Ahora yo te digo, como digo, de esta tierra recogerán el polvo si no aparece en la noche. Porque aquí los cubanos van a morir firmes. Ya te dije que tenemos que seguir comiendo hierba, comemos hierba. Y tenemos que vivir de lo que producimos, de eso vivimos. Patria o muerte, venceremos.
So earlier today I mentioned that we haven't experienced a blackout yet. Now it's time. The first time that there is no electricity anymore. It just stopped. We're still in La Habana Vieja, in Old Havana, the touristic area. So it also happens here. We are eating right now, at least we already have the food, and we are eating ropa vieja. And by the way, one of the best ways to support locals is to eat in local restaurants. You can go to touristic places where you will pay literally 10 times as much money. The quality of the food is not better. So I would definitely recommend you to check out where Cubans eat. We are eating ropa vieja, a Cuban dish. I think that's the most traditional Cuban dish. It comes with meat, with rice and beans and plantain, and it's absolutely delicious. And we paid for 2 dishes 2,400 pesos. By now it's 30 hours later and I'm already in Santiago de Cuba and still without electricity. And that is because it was actually a nationwide blackout and we still don't know when we'll get back the electricity. However, I'm not being nervous about that because I'm always traveling with power banks. This one here is super thin, it charges the phone very quickly and it also works magnetically and has a super strong hold. It charges quickly and I love having it with me as it is also super small and compact. If you need a power bank, I can only recommend this one. I will leave you a link in the description below. Make sure to check that one out.
I think this was my first real blackout, and I quickly realized how impossible life gets without electricity.
We are in Cuba 4 days now, and we've experienced life here as good as possible as a tourist. We've talked to people, we've listened to their stories, and right now we are without electricity since 31 hours now. And I'm not going to complain about this because for me, this is like a one-time experience. For Cubans, this is daily life, this is reality. This happens constantly. And I think during all these days, that we've experienced here so far, with all of the conversations we had with Cubans, I realized how incredibly hard life here is and how incredibly privileged we are as Europeans. People here don't even dare to dream. Like, if you talk to them, a lot of people just want to leave. And they don't even care where to go. We've talked to someone who just told us anywhere. Anywhere is better than here. So they don't even put the objective of immigrating to the United States, to Europe, whatever. They just want to leave. Anywhere out of here is an improvement already. And also, if you ask them about future, they often answer things like, there's no future here. I think that's extremely sad because usually we all dream, right? As kids, we dream to become firemen, policemen, doctors, whatever. I feel like people here don't dream. They don't dare to dream because they don't see the sense behind all of that. And that's extremely sad. Obviously, I just hope that the entire situation for Cubans improves pretty soon. I don't care if it's a change of government, the stop of the embargo, both of it. There has to be a huge change here soon for the people. In the end, it should be the people that matter, their opinions that matter, and their dreams and hopes.